Hello and welcome to a very special episode of A Sort of Young Person's Guide to Prog Rock. I am your host, Ian Prize. So today you might have noticed we are not doing Dark Side of the Moon.
Wait, we're not doing Dark Side?
Nick is furiously copying Ryan's notes right now. I decided it was time to stop running from the elephant in the room. So the album right after Meddle, just on the precipice of Pink Floyd's meteoric rise, is in fact Obscured by Clouds. So Obscured by Clouds is a soundtrack album. They had been asked by the director Barbet Schroeder to do a soundtrack to More back in 1969. It was a movie about hippies in the desert of Ibiza, I guess, and it became their third album. So this director, Barbet Schroeder, wanted their underground psychedelic club cred again for this movie. So he asked them to come back and make him a new soundtrack for his new movie, La Vallée. So we'll talk more about the movie, but briefly it's about a French hippie trek to the jungles of Papua New Guinea to learn about the true nature of humanity. So this album was recorded in two bursts in Chateau de Something or Other in France, and it was recorded by Pink Floyd alone, locked in the studio, watching the movie with a little stopwatch to hit the main bits. So these sessions were completely self-contained, just them writing, recording, and producing this album. And I'm just going to go ahead and speak for probably everyone to say it is an album I listened to once and said, okay, and then moved on with my life. So as we trudge through the dark and thorny woods of Prague, there is in fact just this wonderful rotten log called Obscured by Clouds. And today we are going to look under the log and see if there's some interesting bugs under there. So to help me today are my junior entomologists, Brian.
Hello.
Ryan.
Top of the evening, Ian.
And young Nicholas.
Hi, Ian. Happy to be here.
I am buzzing. Let's do this thing. So before we start, if anyone has a different origin story than I listened to this album once when I became a Pink Floyd fan and then moved on, raise your hands now.
So I actually don't know the origin story. I'm really not sure the first time I heard this. It's not like so many of the other albums we've done where I very clearly remember it. However, I have an odd fondness for this album, and I have probably given it a once-over 50 times in my life. It's been part of the mix.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so I guess I'm different there.
Okay.
My origin is exactly what you said, Ian. I think I've heard this album once.
Yeah.
Mine's really interesting. I actually listened to it for the first time for this podcast that I'm a guest on. And
Nick's just here so he doesn't get to
right.
No, I have like vague fever dream memories, almost deja vu of like, oh, I think I remember that song. There's one song on this that I actually remember that I actually listened to in the height of my Pink Floyd fandom. But quite obviously, the big shadow that is cast over this album is Dark Side of the Moon. So they were already working on Dark Side of the Moon and took breaks out of their recording schedule to come back and record this album, which they had obviously been specially commissioned for. So you can tell for me that these are their B-sides. And I totally understand the desire to not use up your good stuff on what they would have probably just been like this some throwaway soundtrack album. So A, it feels like a lot of half-baked demos. Not to say good or bad, just half-baked. And a lot of instrumental music, which of course fits with the fact that it's a soundtrack album. So it's a lot of Pink Floyd just kind of vibing out. And 4 of the 9 tracks are just pure, straight instrumentals. And not even Shine On You Crazy Diamond like building instrumentals, just some organ blah 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 instrumentals.
And I think you're right as far as this being the B-sides. It might even be more extreme than that, though, right? Because I don't even know if you could call this phoning it in. I think this is mailing it in. That doesn't mean I don't like it, but
Yeah.
because you talked about they're essentially taking breaks from the Dark Side sessions, but these also, if I'm not mistaken, they came up with this pretty much on the fly, whereas Dark Side, that material had been toured for some time already before they ever stepped into the studio.
Yes. And I think meticulously planned out by Roger Waters as a concept.
Right.
Interestingly, whilst on first listen this new time around, I was like, oh yeah, this just feels like a bunch of random songs just flying at me at rapid pace. I actually do hear the concept, and we'll get to that.
If you were to tell me that all of these songs were written by someone else, I would heartily believe you, because it really doesn't sound like Pink Floyd to me. It doesn't even sound like metal. It's just a different thing. And I guess I'm colored by, like, I've already listened to all their Golden Age albums, so I know what they're capable of. And this is just like, okay, why does this even exist? But it's not that it's all bad. It's just that it's not what I've come to think of when I think of Pink Floyd.
If you took every Pink Floyd album and gave it to someone who never listened to Pink Floyd before, and they listened to these in just random order, all the albums, I think you would be hard-pressed to identify this as the seventh album right before Dark Side. You would assume this is like the second album or first, because it's such a backward step, I think, in their sound, which doesn't mean I dislike it. I'll say right off the bat, I was surprised how much I enjoyed this album. Especially since I can't think of the last time I've listened to it.
Yeah, I was going to say we'll get to my first note when we get into it, but I actually heard a lot of Saucerful of Secrets, which was their 1968 album. I heard a lot of and I think because the movie's about hippies, I think I heard a lot of hippie throwback, which of course was 1968. And I think because this album was obviously recorded on the fly, and you can hear David missing guitar notes. You can hear Nick simplifying his drums, and you can hear when they recorded the vocals, they recorded the first intake breaths and mouth clicks and stuff. So you can hear that this was just done. I don't know for sure, but it feels like just one take. We're getting these songs done, dusted, let's go. And I think that Helter Skelter youthful energy, if you want to call it that, felt very Saucerful of Secrets. So Brian, you're absolutely right. This feels like a throwback, especially because we know that Dark Side of the Moon is going to be the literal most crisply recorded album of all time. It's an interesting little twist.
And I think Ryan makes an interesting point about that they were touring on the Dark Side stuff, which reminds me a lot of comedians. They don't start by writing an hour and then they just say, I'm done, and then they go up and perform it. It's they go to the clubs and they hone it down to get the exact jokes and wording right.
Yeah.
And to a degree, I imagine that also is true for music, because you do get some feedback from the audience. It's a little bit more direct when you're a comedian because the laughs are either there or not. But I think being a band that performs, getting that feedback on what you're playing is useful.
Oh, Nick, I think you're right. And you do get an audience reaction, though, when you're playing the music. I think you're right. It's not as visceral as them either laughing or just sitting there silently. But I think there's probably some truth to them touring the material and go, guys, we really need to trim down the 45-minute version of On the Run. It's a bit much.
No, and I think also with something like Dark Side, where it's a narrative arc, I think you could probably see wow, they really are falling asleep there.
Yeah.
I think you probably get that back for sure.
It's interesting that the non-film album has a narrative arc and this one clearly doesn't.
So I guess we'll quickly talk about the concept that they do have. So obviously Dark Side of the Moon was a concept about, we'll get to what that is next week, but it's basically a concept about life and the things within life that come at you. This concept is beautifully supported by lyrics and beautifully supported by musical tone and drama and musical whatever. This album, as you have all mentioned, just sounds like a bunch of random musical artifacts. However, if you actually read the lyrics, I think because they were responding to the movie, which is a hippie enlightenment path, if you want to call it that, there's a lot in here about finding your own way and coming to your own realization and taking opportunities when they come at you and all that sort of stuff. like living your life to 100%. Living moss. One wise taqueria once told me.
I wonder if the international listeners are just not going to get that joke at all.
So anyways. So if you dig deeply and just read the lyrics on the paper, which I have, the concept actually does come out, but it's not supported by the music at all. The music just comes at you hard and fast, or slow and methodical. That's why it doesn't feel as concept-y, though in fact it is a soundtrack album supporting a movie. So, any general thoughts about this album?
This is a bad metaphor. It's an unconfident lover. A little too fast sometimes, a little too slow. Not really any prediction where it's going at any point. Like,
yeah, experimenting with some interesting tempos.
Jesus Christ. Okay, here we go. So, we are not doing the full album today. We're just going to hit some of the main beats as we go along. So there's a lot of beautiful instrumentals, and I do suggest that everyone go listen to the full album because it actually is a pretty groovy album, and you might find something in there for you. But today we are starting with Burning Bridges. So this is very obviously a Journey song about, like, I'm, burning the bridge of my old life. I am entering La Vallée, the valley of existence. And I was going to say right out the bat, I thought I remembered this song. It turns out that Mudmen, which is the instrumental of this song later, was the song I actually remembered. But that being said, this is the Pink Floyd I think we're here for. I think it's a throwback to Saucer Full of Secrets. It's kind of groovy, all that sort of stuff. But I think this is the Pink Floyd I'm down with. I was actually like, okay, we're on, if not familiar territory, very pleasant territory.
Like in many of the other recordings, and since this is the one we started with, I noticed how thin Dave's guitar sounds. I know we're probably going to get into the whole aspect of the production, yeah. But, it's just kind of like a classic, psychedelic B-side. And they do one thing that I tend not to like in a lot of, psychedelic or even just general, classic rock songs, is when the melody follows the riff exactly. And it just repeats and repeats and repeats. I find that to be kind of boring and repetitive. But I think overall, the feeling of the song was good. So overall, I liked it anyway. But it really sounds like they're recording it in their garage or something. It just doesn't feel right in terms of the recording quality.
it reminds me of, when you get the deluxe version of some album. And it's like, oh, it includes the demo version of this. It's like, but that's just worse. This is kind of thrown together, and maybe it runs a little too long over here, and the vocals are a bit messy. I hear the throwbacks that you're talking about, Ian, but it's still like a Diet Coke Floyd. I don't know. It's mind you, I think the shittiness is charming, but it's a reasonable facsimile of Floyd.
Nick, your comments about the sound quality is interesting, because this was actually recorded at a quite famous recording studio in France that produced a lot of hit records, and probably the most famous was the Bee Gees' Saturday Night Fever album.
And also Elton John's mid-70s classics, I think including Yellow Brick Road.
Yes.
My guess is that since they were recording Dark Side of the Moon, the band was also very busy. And since this was for a movie, that production of a film can be quite difficult. So maybe it was just rushed in general, and that's why the recording quality suffers.
Yeah, no. I mean, basically the story is that they recorded it themselves, and I think they just booked a week and then another week, and they literally just went in doodly-doo-doo-doo and moved on.
So
there's no producer.
Well, that fit perfectly what Brian is saying, because it's a great studio, they have great tools, and they're just.
I think the other thing that this song really made me think as it was floating away on it, this was kind of the last of this type of song, because we've had Pillow of Winds and Saint-Tropez and Fearless to a certain extent on the last album, Meddle. But this is the last time they ever are lightweight. The rest of their career, they're about to get heavy. And even when they're kind of fun, and Breathe, I would posit, is a very beautiful, kind of light and easy song, it's a pretty epic song. There's this album's the last time you really get to hear David Gilmour just playing acoustic guitar, and they're kind of grooving along. And it's not Goodbye Blue Skies with the bombs falling. Like, this is the last time he's just playing. Ooh, it's a beautiful little Sunday breeze, blah, blah, blah. And I think the flip side is because this type of music is not as quote-unquote heavy as Wish You Were Here or Animals, I don't think it sticks. Like, I can, of course, hum this music now because I've been listening to it for the last week. But, like, there's no hook anywhere in any of this. Mm-mm. So say goodbye to this type of music.
To your point, Ian, in terms of the last time we'll hear this, Dave is singing with his, like, wispy, light, whereas I think there's such a distinctive change in the way he sings Dark Side for the rest of their discography. Yeah,
you're 100% right. I think this is the last time Roger sounds sweet, the last time David sounds wispy, as you say, and the last time Rick gets to sing at all. And I think that is a function of the fact that they're about to make stadium music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're about to leave the groovy club life behind. Because they've been, to this point, a groovy psychedelic club band. They're starting to play theaters now, starting to play festivals, but they're leaving that groovy psychedelic life behind, and they're about to become a stadium band, which requires a specific type of singing.
That's a very good point, both Brian and Ian, because it made me think of that. I wish Anne could comment on this, because she's the vocal expert of the group. But Dave rarely sings in his, like, chest voice, like, from his diaphragm, like, which is, like, octaves lower than his head voice, which he uses a lot going forward. He does use his, like, lower voice a little bit, but a lot of his vocals moving forward are very much in the higher octaves of his range.
Yeah. And I think they fall under more of the belting and powerful.
Yep, that was the exact adjective I was going to use.
This is the last grooving with an acoustic. Say goodbye. So we move on to the gold. It's in the ... So this song is about the journey being the real treasure. The journey was the point the whole time. And I think this part flags up something you guys were talking about at the beginning. So this is a weird, almost like Neil Young song. And I think part of the maturity process as a band is chucking out the stuff you're just not meant to do. And I was like, I think... And this is about to get crazy deep, y'all. I think it's which part of the like you're on. So we have at previous points said the Moody Blues are like the Beatles but stupid, or the Beatles are like Led Zeppelin but groovy, or something like that. I love you both, Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Moody Blues, love you all. No, but the whole point is it's what side of the coin you fall on there, where it's like this is like Neil Young but stupid. And Pink Floyd is about to be on the other side of that, like, where for the rest of time after Dark Side, people will say, you are like Pink Floyd, but something else. Whoa.
Okay, so you become a simile.
Yeah.
You become the point of comparison, and you have to achieve something in order to do that.
Yeah, and you have to achieve Dark Side of the Moon to become the comparison.
Maybe another way to say it is, I mean, Pink Floyd throughout their entire career has such a distinctive sound, and this is their attempt at imitating someone else's sound unsuccessfully.
Yeah, and this is the time in your career where you learn, no, we're not meant to do Neil Young stuff. And I think actually it's got to be pretty hard if you like playing this type of music, but it's like they just don't have that angry folk punk that Neil Young has, like country folk punk. They're just not that. And they're meant to go groove, and they're going to go groove.
I would also like to mention, this is probably the fastest BPM I've ever heard out of a Pink Floyd beat.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's above 2.
And Nick Mason doing 16th notes on the hi-hat is like, where is this coming from? This is not the Pink Floyd I know.
Yeah, even Dave, the second you hear, come on, my friends, let's make for the hills. And you're like, what? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Also, can I be an old man yelling at an obscured cloud for a second? And just say how much I despise using the ellipses in a song title. I think it is. I think it's an abomination. But that's just
why.
Song titles are meant to be declarative, and that just implies that it's like an unfinished thought, and I just do not like it.
Well, I'm gonna be young, vital, fresh-faced Ian today, a youth.
Uh-oh.
And I'm going to say I actually really like the fact that it kind of ends, because the whole point is the gold, the treasure, was actually in the unfinished journey. Because if he said the gold, it's in the pot at the end of the rainbow, like old man Nick wants, then what would the fun be?
That's like saying the best part of your party that you just had was when I left. You just can't wait until it's over.
Oh dear.
This is probably there's probably no better time to mention that this song is only 3 minutes and 7 seconds, and I think the average length of the songs on this album is maybe about 4 minutes, which might be the shortest average in the history of prog rock.
Wow. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, in many ways, like I think the thing you've all been missing subconsciously from these songs is stuff like the breakdown in Money, or, you know, like in Any Color You Like, when they've got one crazy synth solo and then another crazy wah solo, and there's like a dynamic to it. I think the problem with all of these songs is that they don't go anywhere. You can just tell that they're like, we have a verse, we have a chorus, boom, that's a song. We have a verse, we have a chorus, boom, that's a song. And they're just cranking them out. There's not any surprises.
I think this is true for just about every song on here, is that one of the things that's so rich about Pink Floyd is that they have a sound that only they can make. And I think anyone could make all of these songs.
Yes.
Like, it's like my high school buddy, writes songs, but he can't play guitar or sing. So I'll just hand over those songs to this band that can, and then that's what this is. Okay.
Yeah.
I really thought, like, throughout the entire thing, like, it's possible that they didn't actually write any of these, and they were just playing it.
Also, Nick, if you hate ellipses, do studio fades just make you, like, piss boilingly angry?
Studio
Do you
fades?
just start shouting?
Yeah, I'm just saying, hey, the song should just end right now. Why fade it out?
Because the studio fade, that's an ellipses right there.
So Nick was under Paul McCartney's piano in Hey Jude, trying to saw the leg out so he could just end the song.
Yeah. Why fade out the na-na-nas? Just end on one big na.
Just Can you imagine, by the way, if Hey Jude, and he's just like, and nah, okay, that's it. Okay, go home, everyone.
And you hear Paul stand up from the piano for some reason.
What are you doing down there? Fabulous. So, I guess speaking of eclipses, Jesus Christ.
Nope, leave that in.
Yeah, you gotta leave that in.
Here we go. So speaking of ellipses, we are going on to What's the Deal?
God.
So it's a song about making use of life's opportunities, and it's a pretty lame song, and it has the exact same problem as The Gold It's in so much as it's someone else's song. Like, it doesn't feel like them. But again, we're back to that really, really lovely David Gilmour acoustic and soft voice thing.
The first thing that I noticed was that Dave's double tracking vocals seemed a little bit more obvious than normal. And I know that's something he's really, really good at. But at first I was like, oh, there's nice double tracking vocals. And then I was like, wait, since I noticed it, then maybe it's actually not good. And then the second thing is Roger Waters' bass in this, like the way that he's playing his bass just feels very different from like the classic.
So
Rogers.
He plays his bass much more before Dark Side of the Moon. He plays a lot more busy stuff because he had to fill out their sound in like the club and stuff. So he plays a lot more bass. And I think this is what you were responding to, is when we come to Dark Side, he's pretty much going to go boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
I think this one he's doing more fills, I guess.
And I guess now that I think about it, like, I kind of learned how to play the bass by playing Dark Side of the Moon. So I think, like, naturally, like, that's kind of where my style has gone too, which is why it was so interesting to hear his different approach.
Earlier bass. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I ran a little experiment here because I was thinking about the lyrics, and I went ahead and asked ChatGPT to write me some lyrics that sound like a Pink Floyd song, 3 verses and a chorus, and I kind of just confirmed my own suspicion. I was like, the real ones, this really just seems like ChatGPT writing some Pink Floyd lyrics because they're so banal and boring that, and sure enough, ChatGPT produced something very similar.
I think it's interesting to hear how good their lyrics are going to become.
Yeah.
Because, a big problem with this album, which we'll get into, is that Roger didn't really write all of the lyrics. They're still sharing lyrical duties, and there's a lot more paired phrasing where people say, I love cats, and the other one said, and I like rats. And I think there's a lot more of those paired bits.
Yeah.
And a lot more groovy imagery where it was just whoa, and this was in Echoes, the eider down and the going off into space as we fly to the sky and all that sort of stuff. And I love all that imagery. I think this was a whole album of that imagery. And it's weird that we're about to get Dark Side, which is real. He's singing about stuff.
As opposed to let me in from the cold, turn my lead into gold.
Yes! Yes! So meaningful.
Maybe I'm the contrarian, but I actually like this song.
Oh, I never said I didn't like the song.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to make fun of.
Brian, mount a vigorous defense.
Ooh, I don't know about that, because I was even thinking, I don't know if I would even quite put this into hidden gem category, but it's a nice, pleasant song. I don't mind the lyrics. I like Dave's voice. In this, I think you might even get a little, believe it or not, this might be a stretch, but a little wish you were here in terms of his singing, and it sounds quite pleasant.
Yeah, and I was going to say, the caveat I guess I'd throw out again is that whilst we will be making fun of this album vigorously, I don't think there's a bad song on this album. I don't think there's a song where I'm like, how dare you assault me with this? I'd say I would like this song and that song and the next song. I actually like all the songs. It was, do I remember the songs? That's the kicker.
I agree. I found most of the songs to be all right. None of them were bad. Yeah. But I think it suffers by comparison because they're Pink Floyd. If you handed it to me and you said, hey, these are a bunch of songs by a different band, Nick, called Punk Flad, and then I'd listen to it and be like, oh, okay, it sounds like they're off to a pretty good start. I wonder what their next project's going to sound like.
No, and actually, to that point, I think one of you said this, had you chucked this in after Sauce Full of Secrets or whatever, that would have been the natural progression, is start off as psychedelic, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, fun stuff, and then okay, Sauce Full of Secrets, ooh, Meddle, this is getting nice. So we come on to the only hit from this album, Free 4. So this was a song that I have declared is time before time. So the whole song is about life and time and, the progression of one's life, basically. It's done, obviously, in this fun Saint-Tropez style with this kind of, jaunty beat and all that stuff. It's pretty straight ahead. And again, say goodbye to this style. But in addition to the lyrics, they've got this, massive guitar, which is actually straight out of Time. They have a solo. We're getting there. Or actually, we're already there in a different studio concurrently.
Yeah.
So my initial thoughts were, this sounds like a Paul-esque Beatles song that could be a B-side for one of their bigger hits. Mm-hmm. I really did enjoy the effect of that super bassy, distorted guitar. I think that adds a lot of interesting flavor to the mix here, even though it's just a basic blues chord structure the entire time. It adds weight and importance to it. And I believe the guitar effects is something similar to what he used in Time, with just a little bit less echo. You get a little bit more of the rich. It's almost overpowering for the song, because the song's kind of light and the guitar is kind of heavy.
It's the rest is acoustic, but
yeah.
I
think you're both right there in that not only are you never going to hear this again, but I don't think you ever hear it before this either. I think this might stand out from the rest of their catalog.
Interesting.
Someone challenge me on that. But
well, and just the fact that they even started with a countdown is
right.
Beatlesy.
Exactly. So, please, someone challenge me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's actually got an element of novelty, which, again, Pink Floyd would never do a novelty song again after Seamus.
Oh, God bless.
God bless.
This song feels like the longest outro because I feel like the song ends midway through and then it's just ending for the second half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ian, you would hate this song because it doesn't end when you think it's going to end. And I think there's some pretty clear references to Roger Waters' father, who died quite famously young in World War II.
Yes.
Is this the
Yep.
first mention of his father? Because he revisits that theme in many future albums.
So the only one I might posit could be tangentially related to him is Corporal Clegg from Saucerful of Secrets, but that's just because it's like vaguely military. But no, this is the first one. So he says, "You were buried like a mole in a foxhole," which of course is what happened to his dad, who died in World War II. And then I think also this is probably his first outright political statement, because he says, "Who's the master of foxhounds?" And that's just straight up saying, like, who are the war pigs, which is stuff he will go and explore many, many times over later. But I think he's avoided both of those subjects pretty much, his dad and politics, up until this this random novelty song.
Did it see any radio play? It was supposed to be a single, right?
Why, yes, Ryan. Free 4 did make it to 36 and 29 in France and the Netherlands, respectively. So it wasn't not a radio hit. It just was not a radio hit. So we then come on to Stay. So this is pretty much, I think, the third to last real Rick Wright composition until The Division Bell. So it's a subject he actually visited on Summer of 67 on Adam Hart Mother. Jesus Christ. It is... He's actually revisiting this subject, which he visited previously on Summer of 67 on Adam Hart Mother, which is basically about loving down with a hippie lass in the field, basically. And this song actually probably got me thinking the most about this album. Like, it really got me thinking about this album. First off, I actually think this whole album had really decent compositions. I think if they took any of these songs, brought them forward, and gave them the attention in every capacity that all of the songs on Dark Side or Wish You Were Here got, I actually think all of these had great song potential.
So if they'd actually tried.
Yeah, no, and legitimately, I think it's like a little bit cleaner, a little bit more dynamics, a little bit better lyrics, and then definitely some good production. And I think that's the main thing that we have been talking about this whole time. They're massively let down by the production. And I think you're missing a lot of dynamic organ. Obviously, there's a lot of just ambient organ going on, but I think the massive organ swells, supported by the backing vocals and well-recorded full-sounding piano and guitar, is something that absolutely didn't happen on this album. Everything sounds thin. Everything doesn't sound backed up by anything. It's just kind of some acoustic guitar and some guy singing.
Talking about it kind of makes me want to just listen to Dark Side of the Moon as soon as we're done.
And then I guess also in regards to that, because, y'all said that this felt like some guys just recording in a basement, basically, which in essence it was. I will say I have a lot of affection for these types of songs. And I actually think I said this with Moonchild, where I think the musician in me totally vibes on a bunch of guys hanging out in a basement trying to make some music. And this whole album does sound like some stuff we could have done in high school. Mm-hmm. And I say this in so much as like the songs aren't the best songs on earth. The lyrics aren't reaching for the stars. It was just that someone wrote a pretty smooth song. David Gilmour's like, oh, I got a cool wah pedal. Let me try that out. And I was like, no, I totally vibe on that. Where it was just like, let's just fuck around with the ingredients we have at hand. Let's not shoot for the stars. Let's go. I have a lot of like innate affection for this type of like grungy home demo type of music.
I have a lot of affection. I love Rick's voice, and it's sad we never hear from him again, really.
But I think it's that the raw facts is that he's got a very intimate style, but he doesn't have the strength that David has. And again, they are about to be a stadium band. And he doesn't have frontman vocals. He's got this kind of beautiful psychedelic folk rock sound to him. And I really like his voice, but it just doesn't have that power that David has, which they need coming up.
Yeah.
I'm glad you clarified that, because he does great harmonies with David Gilmour throughout their golden era. Maybe it's just recency bias, but this was the song that stuck with me the most. I really liked the kind of minor chorus. That stuck with me. I think this one was my favorite.
And I was going to say, in that vein, that's what I was getting at with the kind of decent compositions. I think that there's some cool compositional tricks they have, some pretty interesting melodies. It was just that they don't flesh them out and don't do anything with them.
Is there any other song in their lineup written by Waters, sung by Wright? Because especially thinking about the future division between the two, it's fascinating that they collaborated in this way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Us and Them is the last time that ever happens. Mm-hmm. But this is, I guess, what I was getting at is like Rick Wright is not going to be even half in the spotlight as the time goes on. This is his third to last big outing. Mm-hmm. So obviously, this whole album was the soundtrack to a movie. So we're going to play a little game now and see if you can tell me what was happening in the movie during any of these songs.
And Ian, have you come with the actual notes?
I've got the notes here.
Oh boy.
So the plot main outline is that a French woman goes into the jungles of Papua New Guinea looking for a rare exotic bird feather. I don't really know why. I didn't read that part.
Oh, yeah, don't explain that.
Yeah, so for general hippie reasons, she goes looking for an exotic bird feather and runs into... And that's all I'm going to say. So we'll start at the top. I'll set the scene. Well, that was setting the scene. So we have Obscured by the Clouds and When You're In. So she's arrived in the jungle. And what do you think the first thing that happens to her is? So we're at Burning Bridges.
Indiana Jones-esque action sequence with burning rope bridges. And they're like, it's, you know, she's making her way across it and it's somehow burning behind her.
Okay, so we've got adventure. We've got giant gorge with literal burning bridges. Brian, do you have any guesses about it?
Well, is it metaphorical? Like they're leaving somewhere to go to Papua New Guinea, and they're burning their bridges on their way out with the modern world and their Western society?
That is very astute. Yes. So, part one. A young French woman comes to Papua New Guinea to find exotic bird feathers. And she runs into a gang of hippies who are going into La Vallée, which was marked on the map as Obscured by Clouds, which is both the name of the movie and then the name of the album. So they are going into La Vallée to find, as they would say, an Eden of groovy tribes people. This was a whole thing in the late 60s, early 70s, the hippie trail and whatnot. So these hippies are going back to find the Garden of Eden. So what do we think happens in The Gold? It's in the...
Maybe I should look at the lyrics for these songs.
It will not help at all.
It really doesn't.
Okay.
They're about to go meet the Papuan tribe down in the valley. So what's the deal, Brian? So
looking at the lyrics, is this they're on a journey and then they start to separate or grow apart?
So basically, the main character, so they're all in the encampment now, and she wakes up in the middle of the night, and she is walking by one of their huts, and she hears them speaking fluent French, and they're on a little like ham radio thing, and she's like, "What's the deal?"
That's the real answer?
The twist.
That's the real answer.
Oh my god.
Okay.
So she's like, "What's the deal?" She says this in French, of course. Then we come back through Mudmen, which is kind of just the morning where she realizes, like, oh my god, I'm in the jungle with strangers, basically. Childhood's End, where she decides, I have to get out of here. What do you think happens during Free For?
She tries to escape.
That's an awfully jaunty song for an escape. I mean, that's like, gives it almost a Benny Hill type of vibe.
So she's like, I got to get out of here. She's running through the jungle. She comes to what she now finds is the edge of the forest. And oh my God, it's a painted wall with a door. She's on a set.
Truman Show style.
That's exact.
She goes through the door. That's the end of Free For. And she sees a bunch of people in like hilarious 70s spacesuit things. They're in these like weird like red spacesuits. All got masks on. What do you think happens during Stay?
She stays.
One of the operators, I'm using quotes here, takes off his mask, and he is...
David Gilmour.
He's David... No, he's actually a very, very, very hirsute-looking human. And he explains to her that this is actually Earth in the future after the atomic blast.
Oh.
And she's been on like a...
Oh, for
a
God's
set
sake.
this whole time.
She was Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, oh my, there's nothing original. Well.
So what do you think happens during the final show of Absolutely Curtains?
She brings down the whole operation.
Ooh.
It turns out she was also Sixth Sensed. So she actually died at the beginning in a car crash.
The double twist.
So this whole thing was...
It's just an insane fever dream, but she's...
Now, what does this have to do with the hippie movement? Like, what...
So the coda to all of this is all of this was a complete and utter lie. So what actually happened?
Wait, you...
Wow, there are probably some very knowledgeable listeners that are like, what the hell is Ian doing?
Yeah, all five of their Barbet Schroeder diehard fans that are just fuming at Ian at this point.
So I'm just going to say what actually happened during all of this. The real plot is a French woman tries to go into the jungle of Papua New Guinea, genuinely meets up with some hippies who are trying to go into La Vallée. They go down, hang out with the tribe, and basically it sounds like there was a ton of monologues about this is how humanity should really be, and then the movie kind of just ends.
Oh, man, it's just as boring as I was afraid it was going to be.
You made it so much more interesting.
I know.
Yeah, I was going to say, my God.
And the music was used, apparently, as just like on random tape decks and stuff, or whatever, like just on the radio. As Barbet Schroeder apparently said, these just seemed like the type of people, i.e. hippies, who would listen to Pink Floyd. I didn't actually want to use the music like Dark Side of the Oz, where it's an actual score. So I guess this music was just sprinkled incidentally in the background. So, yeah, this whole game was fatuous. I'm sorry I've let you down.
Well, I had fun.
No, Ian, that was a master stroke on your part. The fact that, God, that was good.
I had a good time writing that movie.
I should have been suspicious at all of these similarities to much, much better known films, but...
More famous twists.
But
I wasn't sure if I was going to pull...
hey, you legitimately got me.
You got me too.
You actually got me.
There we go. So I was explaining this to my wife beforehand about, I was like, I'm going to get these fools. And she was like, will they fall for it or whatever? And I was explaining about the time that Brian, with a straight face, mentioned the famous Saint Corpulus. And it was like, oh yeah, no, he's the saint of overeating. And me and Ryan were like, yeah, that sounds right. It sounds vaguely Latin. Sounds like it could have been like some, Anglo-Saxon early bishop or something.
Oh
boy. Okay, here we go. So that's what happened in the movie. And we are returning now to the album. So I guess the main thoughts about it that we've all had is obviously it was rushed. And I think the main output of this is it has the really stupid production, which we've gone into. So it's not very clean nor very expansive like their other albums. Like it's just thin. Also, it lacks the Roger Waters structure that's about to come on pretty hard. So obviously he's not writing all of the lyrics, but in a more broad sense, there's not a driving concept that's brought out clearly. You know, as I guess we just mentioned, it was supposed to be a movie soundtrack, so it could both be excused for being a little aimless, but then also you're kind of hoping that there's more of a clear story arc, but 'twas not to be. But I guess my second to last thought is I think that these are actually some pretty good songs. So I will say to everyone at home, listen to this album. You might like it.
Brian, did you come prepared with your usual?
Yes.
It exists.
This might be the shortest review he's ever done. Our very good friend, Bobby Kreisgau, the Dean of American Rock Critics, says, in very occasional songs from Barbet Schroeder's film La Vallée, the movie got buried, now skip the soundtrack. See.
Wow.
Woohoo!
It's so complimentary. Occasional songs.
Is he really the dean of rock critics?
That's the title he gave himself.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, no, to be fair, the Pope was actually at his coronation, but he put the crown of the dean on his own head.
Okay, Ian, you can't get away with it this many times. You're leaning a little far over your skis here, bud.
That was a little Charlemagne humor. Brian's wetting himself.
I liked it.
Oh.
So here we go. So I guess the final thoughts here, my final defense of everything, with the massive exception of Ummagumma, Pink Floyd are not offensive. And I feel like you can really build out a career from there. And I would say probably my hottest take about this album, I think this album has the potential to be someone's Meddle. And I guess also related to that point, a wise Ryan once said that Meddle is like a delicious vanilla milkshake. And I would just, I guess, say some people find vanilla too spicy and just need a saucer full of warm cream. And that's what Obscured by Clouds is, just a nice saucer full of warm cream. So my Meddle is Meddle.
Yeah.
Where it's the album that's not quite Dark Side, but is, as actually has at points been my favorite Pink Floyd album. I think this album has that potential for someone. It has good songs in their way.
You're that person. Please write to us.
Well, do these people have nicknames, right? Because, you know, Brian, you've led us through all of the nicknames that the different Yes fans have, right? From the different generations of the band. Mm-hmm. You know, your big generators and whatnot. So what would be the demonym for our Obscured by Clouds fans?
Cloudies.
And if you're a Cloudy out there, please comment on something, because I would be fascinated to know if you exist.
Last interesting fact, Barbe Schroeder is still making movies. He had a movie that came out last year, 2023. Still kicking.
I mean, I frankly don't know much about his career. I don't know if he is particularly famous outside of France.
Looking at his filmography, he flirted with some Hollywood films in like the 90s, but I think he would be described more as a foreign director at this point.
Gotcha.
I want to know who he was in Beverly Hills Cop 3, because apparently he's in it. Oh, not joking. That is not a joke.
Wow. Yeah, we now have to clarify what ridiculous things we say are jokes and aren't jokes.
This is real. He was the president of France in Mars Attacks.
Which suggests that the French people know him. Any final thoughts about Obscured by the Clouds?
So I would like to kind of push back against your Meddle argument, only just a little push, like a teeny shove. In that this album is, I believe, rightfully skipped, but not because it's bad, but because it doesn't sound like Pink Floyd. And Meddle was clearly especially Echoes, was clearly the twinkle in Dark Side of the Moon's eye. And then this is like, I believe one of you said that this feels kind of like a step back. And I think the reason why people like me, like, listen to it for a podcast, like, kind of overlook it, is because it's not part of the golden age, even though it sort of falls in
temporally,
like, chronologically. Yeah. And I have kind of an interesting, maybe this would be a controversial opinion, is I think like there is a lot of great stuff here, and I think it would be interesting if another band took a swing at it that had more time and better quality recording, because it doesn't sound like Pink Floyd, but I can think of other bands that probably could pull it off better. Like specifically The Band. I think that they could pull this off. I also think like an early version of The Who could have pulled it off. And for me, in my head canon, this is not a Pink Floyd album, but it is.
I'd agree with you. And I think maybe the other reason I think this got left to the dustbin of history is, again, not because it's bad. I think it's just superfluous. It's like you already have Meddle, you already have Dark Side, and you don't have enough time in your life to listen to every album ever made. I think this is an album for the Pink Floyd completist, and maybe that's just that. Brian, any big final thoughts?
Nope.
That's what I like to hear. Contract fulfilled. So there you have it. That was Obscured by Clouds. I have been your host, Ian Prize. and I promise next week will truly and absolutely be Dark Side of the Moon. I want to thank my guests, Nick.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you, Nick. Brian.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Brian. And Orion.
Much obliged, Ian.
Much obliged, Orion. If you want to hit us up with any longer thoughts, queries, or questions, helloprogfrog@gmail.com. And if you want to find us on Instagram, it is progfrogpod. And that's it for now. We will see you next week for the one and only Dark Side o' the Moon. We'll see you next week. Talk about obscured. Imagine being between Meddle and Dark Side of the Moon. Don't get no respect. That's not going in my type 5. I'm going to say.
Ian, are we your test audience right now?
I've got a red eye to Branson after this, where I'm doing an Ian Does Dangerfield a residency.